10 huge signs that you or somebody else has an eating disorder, part 2, coming up. Don't forget to subscribe and check out my resources below. And if you want to speak with me, there is also a link in the description box. And don't forget to check out the Empowered Eating System, my new program. You can find details below. A couple weeks ago, I made a video called Huge Signs That You Have an Eating Disorder. It might be you or it might be somebody else. I've collected these signs over the years, just observing my behavior and other people's behavior, clients' behavior. There seems to be a predictable pattern of behavior. At first the list was only 4 or 5, and then it kept adding more and more and more. And I watched other videos and they pointed out other signs of eating disorders. And I saw a lot of these signs in previous versions of myself. I look at back when I was in my 20s and then even my early 30s, and I thought, yeah, those were signs that I had. So if you have some of these signs, don't worry, other people have them too. Okay, let's get to it. The first one is a feeling of loss of control. When you have an episode, when you are binging, purging, chewing, spitting, whatever, it feels like you're out of body. Have you ever felt like that? You're out of body, like something has taken over the control panel of your brain and you're not even thinking anymore. You're just on autopilot. It might seem that way, but the truth is you are making that conscious effort. You are moving your hands. You are moving your arms. You are moving your mouth. That is you. But you're so fast and you're not thinking about it. You don't stop and breathe and think about what's going on. So it's easy to get that idea that you are out of control. In other videos, I will show you how to regain that control. But that feeling of lost control is a huge sign that you have an ED. And even if you don't have an ED, you might be disordered. You might have times where you're really restrictive, and then you have these, what I call paroxysms, where you eat a lot more than you wanted to. And you think, how did I do that? Where did all the food go? How is the bag empty? So you don't have to have a full-blown ED to have that feeling that you are out of control. Eating way more than you intended, that's a sign that something is wrong. When you're eating, you're really frenzied, right? You're just kind of like moving stuff, opening cabinets, opening fridge, open bags. You're moving so fast, you're breaking things. You don't put stuff on a plate. You don't eat reasonable portions. You're not paying attention to the portions. You don't really care. You're usually distracted. Usually when people are out of control, they're watching something or they're reading something. There's some other form of entertainment. There's some other medium that's distracting them from the episode. It's like the only thing they don't want to pay attention to is what they're eating. I'll give you an example. Instead of using scissors to open a bag like I usually do, when I was in that really frenzied state, I would just like tear it open. It was like I couldn't take an extra 2 seconds to open the bag. Or I would eat it in the car on the way home. I just had this insane urgency. I had to eat this. I had to have it. Later, I learned that I didn't need it. In fact, it was damaging my life. But you know, when you're really thirsty on a hot day and all you can think about is getting water, that's what it felt like. The next sign is black and white thinking. You think everything is yes or no. There is no room for nuance. Either you have a really bad day or you have a really good day. There is no room for in between. This food is bad, this food is good, and you should never have any of this, and you should only have this. You gravitate towards the extremes and you're not able to grapple with details, with exception. You don't want to deal with exceptions. You don't want to deal with nuance. You don't want to have to think critically is what you don't want to have to do. And that is a telltale sign that you have an ED. It's black and white. That's why they call it that, because there's nothing in between. Your thinking is binary. Breaking that can be challenging. There are ways to do that, and I'll cover that in other videos. But one example of black and white thinking is categorizing foods as good and bad. You have the bad category and then you have the good category. Well, the thing is, like most things in life, it's a spectrum. Okay, there's stuff that is bad or less bad, and then there's stuff that is good. So broccoli, most people are going to categorize that as good. Chocolate, most people are going to categorize that as bad, even though they have their place in a diet. Chocolate for entertainment and pleasure, and broccoli for nutrients and fiber and all that. It's not that they're bad, they just serve different purposes. But when you're thinking black and white, you don't really understand that. The next sign is long periods of restriction followed by paroxysm. So I just mentioned a paroxysm. What happens is you have this period of restriction and you're really good. That's how you describe it. And then something explodes. You know, it's late at night and you have, I don't know, 1,000, 2,000 calories. Like, it's not really a binge, but it's way more than what you're used to. It's way more than you would give yourself permission to eat. It's way more than what the serving size is. So it's like this, and then it's like boom, like that. There's this huge sudden spike in intake, and you don't know what happened. You don't know how to stop it. Now you're thinking, oh, what if it happens again? Now you start devising strategies. How can I manage this a little better? How can I be better? How can I have a little more willpower? You immediately go into damage control. Like, how can I stop this again? Now you have this fear that it's going to happen again, and you're going to lose control. And that's a legitimate fear, because if it happens once, it can certainly happen again and again and again. Things can spiral out of control really fast when you have an ED. One episode, that's one thing, but then it's 2, then it's 3, and then it's every week, and then it's every month. It's kind of like a virus. It starts in one place and then it spreads from there. That fear is really legitimate. If you don't take care of the problem early, it has a tendency to get worse. The next sign is you make excuses for not eating, usually when you're with other people. I think I mentioned this in part 1, where you eat really well in front of other people, but then you eat terribly when you're alone. It's like salad in front of other people, cookies and ice cream when you're all alone. You usually do it in secret because you don't want anybody else to know. It's the dirty laundry you don't want anybody to see. But then you go to a restaurant and you say, oh, I'm not hungry, oh, I don't want anything, and oh, nothing looks good, oh, I'm just, I had a big breakfast. Like, there's always some reason you can't eat. And then it makes everybody else feel kind of weird. It's really self-centered if you think about it. Instead of enjoying the moment, instead of participating, instead of playing your role in that situation, you think about yourself, and all you can think about is either a previous episode or calories or weight or whatever. You're thinking about yourself, basically. You have this whole arsenal of excuses that you can make for why you can't eat. So you go to a social event or a party, restaurant, whatever, and you're the only one not eating. The next sign is you have a heightened interest in food. I remember in my orthorexic days, or even on days when I was restricting, it's like all I could think about was planning, and I would make grocery lists, and I would look at recipes, or I'd watch food videos, or I would just be thinking about the next meal. It's like I can never really concentrate on what I was doing. So I would focus on food when I wasn't eating. I would focus on food after I'd just eaten. But when I was eating, I was focused on something else. It's kind of weird how that works. We think about food all the time until we actually have it. And then we're thinking about everything else. It's kind of like when you're on vacation, you're thinking about work. And when you're at work, you're thinking about vacation. Wherever you are, be there. The next sign is you're really judgmental. So you are eating this really super duper, super healthy diet, and then you go to a cafeteria or a restaurant or a public venue and you see people eating Panda Express, chow mein with Kung Pao chicken, and you think, oh, that's so unhealthy. It has MSG, and it has gluten, and it has all of this sugar and sauce, and oh my gosh, they're gonna get obese, and they're gonna get diabetes and high cholesterol and all that. How can people not take care of themselves? I was kind of smug too in my early days. Even in my later days of disordered eating, I would look at people and think, why don't you care? Why don't you care more? Even though I had my own problems, never mind that. You can't judge somebody by how they eat. There's a million reasons why somebody would eat that in that moment. And not only that, but there's so much more to life than what you eat. It's not a reflection of who you are. It's not a reflection of your morals. It's not a reflection of your character. It doesn't say anything about you. It's just food. It's just what you're putting into your body. And I think that's one of the reasons why I went orthorexic in the first place, is because I needed to do something better than anybody. And I thought, you know what? I'm going to be leaner, fitter, and eat healthier than anybody else. And this is going to be my one thing. At least I can say that. It was the only feather in my cap at that point. I had no skills, no accolades, no accomplishments, no social network. But at least I had that. So don't be douchey. Don't judge other people by what they eat. Focus on what you're doing and focus on your problems. The next sign is you're always making food but not eating it. I never did this, but I've heard other people doing this, especially anorexics, orthorexics. They make a lot of food, but they never want to eat it. So they spend all day baking stuff, making things, delivering food for various events and parties, but they never partake in it themselves. It's always like they make all this food and then they push it onto other people. It's like they want to make everybody else fat, but they don't want to eat themselves. Because they can't eat the food, so the next best thing is to make it and smell it and be around it all the time. Maybe that's enough for them. Maybe it's enough to smell all that baked stuff that they're making, but they never want to go to that next step and actually eat it. The next sign, sudden changes in diet or a sudden interest in fitness and diet. This is what happened to me. I became super interested in health, fitness, nutrition when I was 20 years old. I really don't know where it came from because nobody in my family was into it. None of my friends were into it. There was no YouTube at the time, so it wasn't YouTube. It's not like I had a history in athletics or health. Nobody was telling me to do this. It just, I don't know, that's still somewhat mysterious to me. But that's when I made drastic changes in my diet. And my diet wasn't bad at the time. I remember having flaxseed and sweet potatoes, and I can see why I would need to intervene if I was having a standard college junk food diet. But that wasn't my diet at all. I ate better than most college students. I started by cutting out red meat, and I started eating a lot more fruits and vegetables, which is fine. But then I got stricter and stricter and stricter, and the list of approved foods became shorter and shorter and shorter. Of course, I thought I was eating the healthiest diet, and I was judging other people for what they ate, even though they were probably healthier than I was at that point. But if you notice that somebody gains a lot of weight or somebody loses a lot of weight and it's really sudden, really drastic, that's a telltale sign. It's one thing if they lose a lot of weight over a year. Okay, that's not a big deal. But if you see them today and then you saw them in 2 months and you don't even recognize them, that's a bad sign. Rapid increases in weight or rapid decreases in weight, that's not good. Weight is not something that you want to drastically alter in a short amount of time. I know that's sexy and exciting, but it's not healthy. Also look for changes in exercise regimens. If somebody who has never exercised in their life all of a sudden is going to the gym 7 days a week, or all of a sudden they're running 30 or 40 miles a week, that might be a sign. Usually you don't go from no exercise to a lot of exercise like that. Okay, the last sign here is stealing food. So if you live with a roommate, you live with a family member, and stuff starts disappearing, that's a sign. I used to steal food when I lived with my family. Of course, I never admitted it. But if you also have a roommate and stuff all of a sudden disappears, things might be going awry. Confronting a roommate, confronting a family member, confronting somebody else about this, it's kind of uncomfortable. And you don't always have proof. You're suspicious, but you don't have the smoking gun. If you're doing it, then this is a definite sign that you have a problem. You shouldn't be stealing stuff. Like, you should be buying it. You should be obtaining it yourself. It's not normal to do that. What's normal is buying what you need and then consuming it. What are some other signs of an eating disorder? Let me know in the comments below. Hope you found this video educational and entertaining. Don't forget to subscribe and check out my resources below. If you liked this video, I'm sure you'll like one of the other videos that you see on the screen. Click one of them and I'll see you there.